You arrive just before sunrise when the suburban sky is still pale lavender, and the only sounds are the sprinklers ticking methodically across manicured lawns. This is Silver Pines Estates, a mid-level gated community somewhere in the outer sprawl of Phoenix, Arizona, circa spring 1994. The streets are smooth, the homes are beige, the air smells faintly of chlorine and gravel, and you, dear listener, are about to spend a quiet day inside the bureaucratic microcosm known as the Homeowners Association. You may think that life here is simple, but you would be wrong. Let us begin with the morning routine. You're shadowing Nancy, the HOA's assistant secretary and chair of the pool compliance subcommittee. Nancy rises at 6:15 a.m. sharp and drinks 1/2 cup of decaffeinated coffee. Per her doctor's suggestion, not by preference. She peers through her lace curtains at Lot 73, where a garden gnome appeared overnight. It's about 6 inches tall, but in Silver Pines Estates, those 6 inches may as well be a revolution. She makes a note in her spiral-bound HOA observation log, a notebook she buys in bulk from Office Max. Gnome sighting, possibly resin, Lot 73, unapproved ornamentation, follow-up. There is no protocol for gnomes, specifically, but there is a general clause about non-conforming decorative elements visible from street. Nancy prefers to enforce gently through newsletter reminders and underlined memos, but she's not afraid to escalate. Her husband, Frank, shuffles in. He used to be HOA vice president, but lost the post in a contentious vote after he suggested relaxing the approved trim colors to include something close to terracotta. Frank has never fully recovered. Outside, the streets begin to stir. Paperboys coast down the curb. Early joggers in moisture-wicking headbands pass the community bulletin board, where someone has posted a missing cat flyer under an expired yoga schedule. The cat's name is Waffles. The HOA rules stipulate that all outdoor pets must be under visual control, a clause that Waffles flagrantly ignored. At 7:30 a.m., the Silver Pines Community Pool unlocks for early access members. The key fob system was installed after a 1989 incident involving an unregistered guest cannonballing during quiet swim. Since then, pool privileges are tightly controlled. Nancy is there to conduct the weekly pool rule compliance audit. She wears orthopedic sandals and a floppy sun hat, HOA issued. She checks for violations. Floating toys larger than 18 inches, none. Food within 10 feet of the waterline, only a granola bar, sealed, and unaccompanied minors. A teen lingers near the diving board, quickly produces a wristband, and is let off with a warning. You may be wondering, how did it come to this? How did a voluntary association of homeowners evolve into a labyrinth of codes and committees? To answer that, we must rewind several decades. The rise of HOAs in post-war America coincided with the suburban boom. As more people fled cities for spacious developments, local municipalities leaned on HOAs to manage infrastructure and appearances, landscaping, trash schedules, fence heights. By the 1980s, communities like Silver Pines were commonplace. Self-governing, covenant-controlled enclaves offering the promise of order, safety, and predictability. But as with many things built on predictability, it soon became clear that small deviations carried enormous weight. At 9:00 a.m., the Architectural Review Committee meets in the community clubhouse, which doubles as a rentable event space for milestone birthdays and bunco nights. Today's meeting has 4 agenda items. 1. A request for a larger mailbox. 2. A question about whether a retractable awning is architecturally harmonious. 3. A retroactive application to repaint a garage door. And 4. The gnome. The mailbox request is denied. The awning request is deferred. The garage door is discussed at length, mostly in terms of whether it resembles Greggy or mushroom taupe, both of which are within the acceptable palette, but only if matte finish. A decision is tabled pending a site visit. Then, the gnome. The committee pauses. Technically, the HOA handbook doesn't mention gnomes, not by name, but precedent matters. In 1991, a homeowner placed a ceramic frog near a koi pond, which led to a wave of similar amphibian figurines that culminated in what is still known in some circles as the Frog Summer. that ended in mass removals and a hard-fought amendment about yard decor saturation. The gnome, some say, could signal a return to that chaos. You might think this is petty, but in this small, sun-baked corner of Arizona, such decisions form the bones of community order. The homeowners aren't just keeping things tidy, they're preserving a vision built on beige, silence, and uniformity. And within that vision, tiny conflicts about fountains, flags, flamingos become the measure of governance. At 11 o'clock a.m., Nancy walks the perimeter. Her clipboard swings at her side like a badge. She notes a driveway with a visible oil stain and a bush creeping into the sidewalk right of way. A child's scooter is parked near a community mailbox pedestal, technically unattended property. She pauses and looks up at a balcony where wind chimes clink lazily in the breeze. She jots down a note, then stops. The wind chimes are within legal decibel range. And besides, they're rather pleasant. By noon, the desert heat begins to press down. Nancy heads home. HOA operation slow. The pool empties. Sprinklers engage once again, despite the region's growing awareness of water shortages. Enforcement can wait. It's too hot now. But behind the quiet exterior of Silver Pines Estates lies a tapestry of order, negotiation, and occasionally rebellion. The pool rules are just the beginning, because this afternoon someone will propose a new garden trellis, and tomorrow the gnome may vanish or multiply. What happens when the rules meant to unify begin to divide? It is now 1:42 p.m. Lunch has been eaten. Nancy had half a tuna sandwich and a pear that wasn't quite ripe. Frank reheated spaghetti and watched half of a Matlock rerun. The sun sits high and indifferent over Silver Pines Estates, casting warm rectangles onto garage doors and baking the neighborhood newsletter, still sitting untouched in several mailboxes. The HOA email list is buzzing, or it would be if this were 2024. But since this is 1994, it's more of a slow boil, a mixture of faxed memos, hand-delivered updates, and carefully typed letters with carbon copies. Nancy receives one such letter now. It's from Mr. Dwight Ellison of Lot 112. Dwight is a recent retiree from municipal code enforcement and considers himself an active community member. He has written, in 3 pages of double-spaced courier font, to inquire whether a wooden garden trellis installed by Lot 58 is in violation of Article 7, Section 2. Structures not affixed to the main residence must be reviewed for aesthetic continuity. Nancy sighs. She remembers the trellis. It's about 6 feet tall, painted a dusty sage color. There's a bougainvillea vine climbing it, though not very successfully. The homeowner, a quiet widower named Mr. Fan, built it himself from reclaimed lumber. He told Nancy once that it reminded him of his mother's garden back in Da Nang. There is naturally no rule explicitly prohibiting trellises, but then again, there is also no rule explicitly allowing them. Nancy calls Marjorie, the HOA vice president and chair of the Landscape Oversight Group, LOG. Marjorie answers on the second ring and immediately begins a deep, theatrical sigh, as if the HOA is a great weight she alone must bear. She says they will need to convene an informal review panel and recommends looping in Harold from the Aesthetic Integrity Committee because he's good with height. They agree to meet in person behind the community clubhouse near the bocce court. There is talk of measuring tools. There is talk of precedent. There is talk of scheduling a community-wide survey to gauge public sentiment on freestanding vertical garden elements. Nancy brings iced tea. Harold brings a tape measure and a manila folder labeled Shrub-Related Cases, 1992 Present. Meanwhile, a shadowy new entity is forming within the community, the Side Yard Watch. It starts innocently enough. 2 neighbors chatting at a block party about how certain lots aren't keeping their utility meters concealed behind approved visual obstructions. Section 9, subsection C. Side yard apparatus shall be visually minimized through use of fencing, shrubbery, or other HOA-sanctioned materials. Then 3 neighbors meet, then 4. Eventually, a rotating group of residents begins to do casual evening strolls with notebooks, noting violations for internal use only. Their motto is unofficial, but widely known. If you wouldn't post it in the newsletter, don't plant it in your yard. At 4 p.m., the HOA receives an anonymous tip, slipped into the official suggestion box in a sealed envelope. It alleges that Lot 89 has installed an unpermitted satellite dish on the side of their home, rather than the rear, and that the dish is slightly visible from the street at certain angles, especially if standing on the median. Nancy adds it to her clipboard. The side yard watch remains unnamed, unacknowledged, but its presence is felt. Some say it's just concerned citizens. Others believe it's a rogue enforcement cell, emboldened by years of ignored suggestions about holiday inflatables. Back at Lot 58, Mr. Fan waters the base of the trellis. He's unaware of the drama his modest carpentry has sparked. The bougainvillea shows no signs of blooming. He hums softly, a tune from his childhood, a warbled bit of memory from a very different place and time. His cat, Pudding, naps nearby on a plastic lawn chair. Across the street, Dwight Ellison watches from behind his blinds. He adjusts his binoculars. He takes notes. He does not like the angle of that trellis. Not one bit. By sunset, the clubhouse has scheduled an open-forum discussion on unapproved landscaping features, set for Friday evening. Light refreshments will be served. RSVPs encouraged, but not required. Nancy sits on her patio and fans herself with the June newsletter. She thinks about the gnome, about the trellis, about the fact that someone recently repainted their shutters in what appeared to be buttered almond, a shade dangerously close to the band pale mustard. Frank is inside, filling out his crossword puzzle. He asks what a 12-letter word is for unreasonably complicated neighborhood politics. Nancy doesn't answer. Instead, she makes a note on her clipboard. It simply reads, "Maybe the gnome can stay, because for all its rules," and codes for all its enforcement panels and landscaping subgroups. Sometimes a neighborhood just needs a little color, even if that color wears a red hat and holds a tiny shovel. It is now 7:18 p.m. in Silver Pines Estates. The sun is making its slow descent behind the stucco roofs and satellite dishes. The asphalt is still warm to the touch. Lawns, those that chose the optional evening irrigation schedule, are gently misted, and a few dogs bark half-heartedly at the distant sound of a garage door groaning open. And somewhere, in the dusky hush of HOA hour, a change is brewing. The first sign that something is off comes at precisely 7:23 p.m., when Marjorie opens the official HOA suggestion box and finds not a complaint, nor a request, but a letter. A formal one, embossed, signed in ballpoint pen by none other than the HOA president himself, Mr. Richard Dick Weatherford. It reads, "Dear residents of Silver Pines Estates, effective immediately, I resign my post as HOA president. After considerable thought, I have come to the conclusion that I can no longer, in good conscience, arbitrate the disputes of mailbox heights and gnome placement. There is a world beyond xeriscaped medians and shrubbery setbacks, and I wish to find it. Please forward any remaining issues to the Vice President. Sincerely, Dick Weatherford, Lot 37. For now." Nancy is stunned. She reads the letter twice, then a third time. She checks the date, as though perhaps it were a prank from April Fool's Day, delivered 3 months late. But no, it's real, and Dick never jokes about HOA matters. Frank, hearing the news, puts down his crossword puzzle with great solemnity. "He finally snapped," Frank says. "I told him the trellis thing would do it." Marjorie, now acting president, calls an emergency meeting. It's attended by 6 board members, 2 spouses, and 1 very enthusiastic resident who brought a color-coded folder of pending fence disputes, 1993-94. But Dick is not present, nor is he at Lot 37, because, and here lies the twist, Lot 37 appears empty. The blinds are drawn, the porch light is off, the plastic flamingo that used to guard the walkway is missing. A folded-up patio chair sits alone on the lawn, and a note taped to the door reads only, "Pursuing alternate governance. Do not forward mail." Theories abound. Marjorie suspects he's moved to an unincorporated part of the county, possibly to build a house with no CCNRs at all. Others say he was spotted at a bookstore in Tempe, browsing through volumes on intentional communities and co-housing design. One rumor claims he bought an RV and plans to live off-grid, though still, ironically, with satellite reception. Nancy isn't sure what to think. She takes a quiet walk past Lot 37, clipboard in hand, out of habit more than purpose. There are no violations, nothing actionable, just a faint sense that something has ended. She pauses near the curb and looks at the planter box. No weeds. A single stone owl keeps watch from the eaves. "Goodbye, Dick," she murmurs. "You served well." In the days that follow, the HOA begins to shift. Slowly, subtly. The trellis case is quietly dropped. Mr. Fan receives a note, unsigned but typed, that simply reads, "Structure reviewed. No action needed at this time." The gnome disappears for 2 days, then reappears with a fresh coat of paint and a tiny umbrella. No one claims responsibility. The side yard watch disbands after a heated argument about the precise definition of partial shade. Its members return to solo evening walks, relieved. The pool rules remain in place, but Nancy begins allowing slightly oversized flotation noodles on Wednesdays. She does not announce this publicly, she just lets it happen. And then, one night, a new resident moves into Lot 37. No one sees the moving van arrive, but by morning, there are signs of change. A welcome mat shaped like a cat, a wreath made of silk flowers in non-approved colors, and a ceramic frog tucked modestly behind the air conditioning unit. Nancy walks by on her morning patrol. She notes the decorations, but says nothing. Instead, she smiles. Because this, she realizes, is the rhythm of things. Rules come and go. Presidents resign. Flamingos migrate. But the true work of the HOA, the invisible choreography of compromise, decorum, and polite confrontation, goes on. You, dear listener, may drift now into sleep, confident that somewhere out there, in a cul-de-sac gently lit by solar-powered lanterns, the bylaws are being upheld, mostly. The pools are being skimmed, eventually, and peace is being maintained, one trellis at a time. Rest well. The minutes of the next meeting will be available by Tuesday.